Maureen Fire History proudly presents Families in Fire, the story of the generations of fire service personnel in Marin County.
I welcome you to the Marin County Fire Chief's historical website. And today we're going to bring you a what I consider a very special Families in Fire program. And we've been invited to this beautiful home in Tiburon by Maureen Buscher, the wife of Frank Buscher, who has since passed. But to be honest with you, Maureen and I have known each other for well over 60 years, being an old Larkspur lady. But the unique thing about Families in Fire in the past, we've always talked about brothers and in the service and fathers and sons in the service. And I've always wanted to do one about the people who are left behind when we're called to duty and the impact it has on the lives and the raising of a family that we all took as a former fireman, took for granted until you sit and analyze, begin to reflect back on history and what the wives were left with. One thing people who don't understand the fire service is that firemen are gone over a third of a year at all times to work a 24-hour shift. When her husband Frank and I both got into the business, the weekly hours was 72 hours a week we worked. Now that's every week. We're going almost at the half the week at work. That leaves the wife to raise the new family, the shopping, take care of the house, automobile, all those kinds of things that we really, in my case, never dealt with. My wife did it all. And Maureen did the same thing. She had a husband who worked, in Frank's case, he worked both shifts and would come off a shift and then work an 8-hour shift as chief. So, but again, what a lot of people don't understand, being the wife of a firefighter is a very stressful family situation. And in my experience, a lot of marriages did not make it all the way through because of the stress it has on one person being gone so often. And it's almost worse today because now the firemen, instead of working a 24-hour shift, are working a 48-hour shift. And in the summertime, if you get on a strike team on a wildland fire someplace here in the western United States, you're gone for a minimum of 2 weeks. Imagine you're gone for 2 weeks. Your wife is home with 2 or 3 children, all in grade school age, taking care of them, doing all their running the schools, Cub Scouts, Bluebirds, all those kinds of things. They're left while we're gone. So it is a very stressful situation. So I'm taking this opportunity to talk to Maureen about what it's like to be a housewife. And in her case, she also pursued her own education and postgraduate work as a teacher. So we're going to talk about those kinds of things and what it's like. So again, Maureen, I'd like to thank you so much for inviting us to your home. The vista I'm looking at right now is incredible. I'm looking out on the San Francisco Bay. You can see San Francisco skyline. And with one cock of my head around the point, I can see the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, I envy you for what you have. So let's talk a bit. You were raised in Larkspur. It is part of as it growing up as a child. And in Maureen's case, she's a very unique family in fires. Her sister married her husband's brother. So it's a very knit family situation. And Frank's brother and her sister also had a child that went up to become a fireman. And everyone in the county knows who it was, Jim Buscher. Jim Buscher, born and raised in Larkspur, went to work for Skywalker Ranch, ended up working for Larkspur, and then got married and moved back to Louisville, Kentucky, where he completed his career in Kentucky. So she's got a couple linkage in the fire service. Not only was her husband in the business, her son Jeff is still in the fire service business, retired from San Rafael Fire Department and working currently for the federal government on projects back at Gettysburg. So, Maureen, tell us about where you and Frank first met. How did it come about?
Well, Frank had been in Korea, and when he came back, he had to stay in the Army for a few months. So he was stationed at the Presidio. And his sister-in-law and brother had a new baby who was Jimmy.
Yeah.
And I was invited to go to the hospital to see the new baby. And she called me and said, and no one will be here, so just come over and say hi, because Marin General was just a new hospital and was close to home. So I visited with her. It was a September warm evening. I came down the elevator to go home. And when the doors opened, there's Barbara, husband Fred Buscher, his brother Frank, and his parents. They were coming to visit. So I'm sure Barbara had an ulterior motive. So they introduced me. I knew Fred, and so they introduced me to Frank, and that was it. And then, ironically, I was working this summer at Macy's on 4th Street in San Rafael. So this person had come in and bought some things. I was in the home goods or something, and bought some bookends, and I never thought any more about it. And then about 5 months later, I got a phone call, and I was in my senior year at college, and my mom told me all about this person was going to call me back. And I didn't even dawn on me the name or anything. And I was social chairman. I went to Dominican University. And so we only had brother schools. There were very few of the Catholic colleges had co-ed. So we get together socially. So I thought, probably someone wants to get together, set up something. So then I got a call, and it was Frank. And would I like to go to a dinner for the volunteers in Tiburon? They're having us get together. And I thought, okay, because I didn't want to upset anybody. And so we went to the dinner at the firehouse upstairs. And in the midst of the dinner, someone said, we don't have any music. So they would walk across. At that time, we had the railroad, and there was a big bridge, and walked over. And we were going to go over to so-and-so's house and get a phonograph so people would have music and could dance. And then, I don't know, little by little, I got more phone calls, and a year and 1 week later, we were married.
Wow.
And I moved to Tiburon, and that'll be 65 years.
And had you graduated by that time?
Oh, yes. I graduated, and I was teaching in San Rafael.
And what was your major?
Liberal arts, with an emphasis in education and art.
Was it one of them a new kind of program, the career you pursued?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
No, Dominican is a liberal arts college.
Okay.
And teaching.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're married. Frank is working where?
In Tiburon. He's a chief.
Oh, no. He's the chief.
Yeah, because he was made chief in 1959.
Right.
And we were married in 1960.
Oh, okay. All right. And now, were you aware of the hours that Frank was working and how much time he's going to be away from home as a new bride? That was kind of, what was that?
Well, I just accepted that's what his job was, and I went to my job at any time.
Okay.
And he'd have meetings. He'd be at the firehouse every day for full 8 hours. One of the things that always was important to him was being home for dinner hour. No matter where he was during the day, what kind of meetings he had at night, he would always be on all the time for the children if he could.
Right.
But that was a priority. And so he'd come maybe home, have dinner, go back, because in those days he would be training the volunteers, doing EMT classes. They were starting from nothing.
Do you recall what Frank's salary was when he was first hired?
I think it was about $400.
$400. And all the benefits were zero?
Zero benefits.
Zero benefits, right. And he worked probably a 72-hour work week at least. Yeah.
Well, he was on call.
Yeah.
He couldn't leave town. We had to live in Tiburon.
Yeah.
And ironically, 4th of July and those kinds of days, my mother, grew up in Larkspur, and Magnolia had the big 4th of July parade, great parades.
Right.
But I'd go to my mom's and take the kids to see the parade. Frank would stay and wait for grass fires. Although, but they were minimal we had a couple of bad ones, but they were pretty minimal because we had the cows on the hills and horses.
Yeah.
So they kept the grass.
Okay, now, what was it like as you started to have children? Now you had 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're teaching. Frank's away at the station.
Right.
You're raising 3
But
girls and a boy.
Yes, but I did not, when I had the children very young, I did not do full-time teaching.
Okay.
All right. Pretty much.
And your firstborn was Jeff.
Jeff.
And Jeff wanted to be a fireman.
Well, actually, he was quite a boatsman. And so at age 10, he did a lot of, at the Corinthian Yacht Club, he did a lot of racing and learned how to really sail well. And then when he was as a member of the club, they'd ask him to help on sometimes. And when he was about 14, Milt McDonough, who owns the Angel Island Ferry at that time, came to our house on a Saturday and wanted to know if the parents, Frank and I, would give permission to Jeff to be a deckhand. And he because he loved the water, he says, sure. And we thought, well, that's what he likes. Mm-hmm. And he did that. And by the time he graduated high school, he had enough hours to qualify for a captain's license with ferry boats. And so he studied, took the Coast Guard test, and got his license at age 18. He had to wait till he was 18.
Wow.
Because he got out of high school at 17. And then he did that, and then immediately started the fire science classes. But what happened in between, the men at the Corinthian Yacht Club, who were all great boaters, and a lot of, in those days, retired Navy, and they, Jeff, you've got your license, let me write you for, the Coast Guard Academy or Annapolis, or, we'll sponsor you. And he says, but I just don't know, because he could do tugboat also. And he says, but I don't know if I really want to let go of the fire service, because he also was a volunteer fireman. Right. And he chose the fire department. Mm-hmm. And then he went. Well, yes, actually, when he tested for San Rafael, he tested, that he would be in the top 10 or whatever. I mean, and a lot of it is exposure that he'd had and common sense but he wasn't ready. So he was hired by Maureen, and he was there for a short time. And then San Rafael said, because they had to wait till you were 21 to go to San Rafael at that point. So he said, they finally, after a year, don't quote me on times, said, would you come and be a dispatcher? So that's how he got to San Rafael.
So, but when you guys were first married, I understand you guys had some type of equipment in the apartment or in the house.
Yeah, we did.
What was that all about?
Well, we had it was, I don't even think it was a Plectron at the time. I'm not sure. But anyway, they got the phones and that you called in. We didn't have alarm
Yeah,
boxes.
that one wasn't up yet. So
No.
so they would call you. You would answer the emergency.
Well, during the day, they had a man in his home. I think he was a veteran from, anyway, it was a job that he could do at home. He would answer the phone. And then in the evenings and during the night and everything, we had a information phone, we had an emergency phone, and then on the side of the cabinet we had the alarm that rang the volunteer horn
Oh,
for the whole town.
wow. Yeah.
So yeah, and then,
did you ever answer the emergency phone?
no, I never. No, but usually that was when Frank was Frank was home, because otherwise he could answer it at the.
So if Frank wasn't home, there would be someone else in the volunteers that had a phone at their house too.
Yeah, a gentleman that had been doing it, but then once Frank started going to the office, he was alone. He didn't have it was just his office was a little shed behind the garage that they had lifted up and put an engine room in. It's crazy.
So so Frank, I was reading the history about the fire station and stuff like that, and then because Tiburon is so close to the bay, in the rainy seasons with especially high tides and high winds, Tiburon, like many of us in this bay area, get flooded. And I understand the firehouse used to get water in it also quite a bit of the time. Yeah, it's a classic photo of Frank sitting in the firehouse with his feet in the water.
Yeah,
it's close. So, tell us the history of the firehouse, the new firehouse that's being built. That is built. You know.
Okay. Well, when Frank first became chief, he didn't really have an office, so sometimes in the evening, the volunteers who wanted to meet with him would come to our place, and the big thing at that time was to get new equipment. They had, they called it the white. It was painted white engine, but I guess it was a white company. And they wanted to get a crown. But they had to make sure, we only had Tiburon for the hills in those days. And so I remember this one night bringing the plans up, spreading them out, and talking about the crown and ordering it and everything. And then Frank says, but there are two other things that have to be done. He says, one is we have to have emergency service for the people because the town's growing. And, but the railroad was still here at that time. And then the second thing is we have to have a decent firehouse. So that was in 1960. So over the years, wherever we go on a trip or something, and the kids, they'd start, became a joke. Where's the flag for the firehouse? Because we have to go look at that firehouse. Because Frank was always putting ideas together, and he has the book that I have that someone's welcome to from history, showing firehouses all over America. So this went on for years and years. And in the meantime, he wrote a grant for seed money beyond the fire service to start the paramedics. And then that Tiburon and Mill Valley came together because they only had like one paramedic.
Right.
They shared and shifts and stuff. And then eventually, of course, now most firemen are paramedics. So that was in the 70s. They got that kind of, it had to be closer to 80. Mm-hmm. And then, so that was all taken care of. And Frank was working on the firehouse, always coming up with ideas. And finally, late 80s, everything, plans got together. And by that time, he'd become quite ill with the fireman's disease.
Right.
And, which is acute leukemia and all the safety didn't help in those days. They didn't have the equipment in those days.
Yes.
But anyway, so he got all the plans done. He moved to the Donahue building, which is a landmark, and had his office there. They moved the engines over to a vacant gas station in town, and they went and tore down the old firehouse, and they rebuilt it, or were rebuilding it. And during that time, he retired.
Okay.
Just about the time it was built, but he never got to sit in it.
We never got to have an office for a day.
They had the office, but it was like, oh, it's not quite ready. Well, about a week or so after he retired, the new chief sat in the office.
Wow.
But anyway, it's a lot of people are very pleased with the department. They talked about what a beautiful fire department, but it took him 30 some odd years to get it.
So you've been in the fire service how since you were married till today? Your son,
Yeah,
is still
I
in
think at 65 years
yeah,
that I've been associated.
Yeah.
And then with my son, with Frank and Jeff together, their combined years is probably at least 90 years.
Yeah.
Like that.
yeah. It's quite a document to you. I mean, and that's why again we've known each other so long that it was both here.
Yeah. And we're smiling. So we have our friend Paul.
So you were my first choice to interview you as one of the families in fires, but I wanted to from a housewife, and you said the same thing my wife says. You just adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Your husband is going to work. I know what his work schedule is. That's what we agreed to when we got married. Mm-hmm. And you just adapt. Mm-hmm. You raise the kids.
And you have people say, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But a lot of them aren't any better off.
As I said, though, it is very stressful. And I've seen a lot of marriages that kind of fell apart because of the work schedule, a lot of time away from home.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Well, I think, I don't know, it was unique. I think we both, Frank and I, had exceptional parents that, they did the core values in both our families.
I was very interested in researching Frank's biography, that even although he became chief at 25, he was also a second assistant chief with the fire brigade, with the railroad company.
Yeah.
And so early in his career, he stepped forward to become a leader.
Yeah.
A lot of people stay in the shadows and don't want to take on all the responsibility, but it's quite evident that Frank was basically a born leader. He was going to step out of the shadows at a young age, in early 20s, 21, when we come back.
Yeah, he started at the firehouse right after high school. The railroad, and did all his training. He was a journeyman and a whatever in the
and
electrical.
He was also a certified electrician.
Yes, and right, but he didn't like working under the electric engines.
So he didn't would you change anything? That had to. You would like to say
so. Yeah, I can only look back and say what if, and I know at the time as a family we just did what, and we were grateful for what we could do.
Yeah.
And we survived.
Yeah.
So
those years.
Yeah. And all the kids became very successful. Jeff, his fire service. Our daughter Kathy, environmental assessor, so she was involved, of course, in and she had her own consulting firm for 30 years, and she's kind of a they all went in like on the ground floor of something new, and then our daughter Teresa, who has her master's in education, has done a lot of.
Oh, she follows you, kind of.
Yeah.
A little bit.
But she has done a lot of.
I'm so glad we got to do this, because we have such history. We're both in our, telling the ladies' age, but we're both in our middle 80s.
Yeah. Go. In mathematical third grade math, that would be
Yeah.
pushing 90.
Yeah.
Once you get to the halfway mark.
And the nice thing about it is that we remember our history.
We're lucky.
To me, history is always,
Oh, yeah.
that's what I want to be. I want to be a history teacher
Oh,
all the time. So, I mean, so it just, I fell down with it just for,
yeah.
so,
That's wonderful.
but it's, to me, it's been a pleasure to be invited here.
Glad to have you.
The radio man, Paul Smith.
Yeah, Paul.
You've been such a great hostess to us. And
Oh, I enjoy it. You know.
And I just want to let you view. Later on in the program, you're going to see a tape we made of her daughter, Teresa, when she was 12 years old. Her father explained the concept behind the Southern Marin Paramedic Authority and how it was all going to work using knives and forks and spoons. So I think you're going to enjoy that at the, and that'll be coming up here in a few seconds. We now are going to talk to Frank and Maureen's youngest child, Teresa, and she's going to tell us how the paramedic program here in Southern Marin came about when she was, 12 years old?
12 years old, yes.
So you have
I have all of the utensils that I need.
okay.
So when I was about 12 years old, my dad was explaining to me that he wanted to start a paramedic system. So it was really important to him that the healthcare, the community was being watched over. And Tiburon, being a very small town, didn't have the financial resources to have an ambulance and paramedics on all three of the shifts. That would have been a lot of resources. So he explained to me that if we brought all of the departments in Southern Marin together, so you have Sausalito, you have Alto, you have Mill Valley, you have Tiburon, and you have these different entities, and they each contribute a firefighter to go to Stanford to the paramedics program. Then you have a group of paramedics. They can be stationed 2 at a time in Mill Valley. And then we can have, or I wasn't sure, Mill Valley or Alto, but in central part in Southern Marin. And then from there, we can have a paramedic, like a truck, and then a separate ambulance. And we can get the paramedics to go to where somebody needs the resources, and you're not draining all of the financial resources from everybody.
Okay.
I explained it better the first time though.
Okay. So that's how the paramedic in Southern Marin came about.
And that's how the paramedic system in Southern Marin came about.
With that said and done, again, I'd like to thank Maureen for the invite and the privilege of sitting down and talking to an old friend, and how it was to be the wife and mother of a person in the fire service and survived all these years. So with that, I say good day. Thank you very much for watching and looking in, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you.